Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey wasn't just another sci-fi flick, it was a mind-bending cosmic riddle that redefined what movies could be. Released in 1968, it split audiences in half. Some walked out, others felt like they had glimpsed the future. It gave us killer computers, spinning space stations, and a baby floating among the stars. But behind all the silence and mystery was chaos, obsession, and experiments that nearly broke Kubrick, his cast, and his crew. From exploding suits to secret NASA advisors, this wasn't just filmmaking, it was survival in slow motion. Tonight, we're drifting into orbit to uncover 20 weird facts about 2001, A Space Odyssey. 1. Kubrick almost launched a real satellite. Kubrick wanted authenticity so badly, he actually looked into sending a real satellite into space as a marketing stunt. He called aerospace companies and asked how much it would cost to put a branded metal object in orbit. The plan was too expensive, so he settled for special effects instead. But the fact that he even considered it shows how far Kubrick was willing to go for realism. The man didn't just want to make a movie, he wanted to make history. 2. The monolith wasn't always black. That eerie black rectangle we all know wasn't Kubrick's first choice. The original prop was made of clear lucite, almost like a giant glass window. But when they filmed with it, the lights reflected so badly it ruined every shot. Kubrick then tried a wooden monolith, but it looked too ordinary. Finally, the team painted it solid black. That one change gave the film its most mysterious image, something that looked simple, yet felt otherworldly. A mistaken lighting created one of cinema's most iconic objects. 3 HAL 9000 was almost IBM. The murderous computer, HAL 9000, is one of the most famous villains in movie history. But did you know Kubrick originally wanted HAL to be branded with IBM? The company backed away at the last minute because they didn't want their name tied to a machine that kills astronauts. As a subtle joke, Kubrick had fans notice something strange. The letters HAL each sit one step before IBM in the alphabet. Coincidence? Kubrick never admitted it directly, but the wink was clear. HAL became timeless, and IBM quietly dodged a PR disaster. 4. Actors nearly suffocated in their spacesuits. Those beautiful, bulky spacesuits weren't designed for comfort. They were airtight, heavy, and sealed tight with no built-in ventilation. During long takes under hot studio lights, actors complained they couldn't breathe. One performer even passed out and had to be rescued by crew members who ripped open his helmet. Kubrick pushed everyone hard, saying, "Real astronauts don't get to complain." The result looked amazing on screen, but it nearly caused serious accidents behind the scenes. 5. The Dawn of Man scene used circus performers. The opening Dawn of Man sequence wasn't done with CGI or trained chimps. It was actors in suits. Kubrick didn't want them to look silly, so he hired circus performers, dancers, and mimes who knew how to move with control. They spent weeks studying primates, learning how to walk, crouch, and fight convincingly. The result was so realistic that many audience members swore Kubrick had filmed actual apes. It was just sweat, fur, and discipline. Even the famous bone toss was carefully rehearsed until it felt like instinct. 6. The space station was a giant wheel. Kubrick wanted his space station to feel like something NASA might actually build. Instead of a flat ship, he designed it as a massive spinning wheel that used centrifugal force to create fake gravity. The set was enormous, built like a rotating Ferris wheel, where the actors could walk upside down while the camera stayed steady. This wasn't just cool design. It inspired scientists. After the film's release, NASA actually cited Kubrick's wheel as a serious idea for future space habitats. It blurred the line between science fiction and science fact. 7. The famous silence almost got cut. One of the boldest choices Kubrick made was to show outer space with no sound. Studios begged him to add explosions and roaring engines, worried audiences would be bored. But Kubrick refused, saying space is a vacuum and silence is scarier than noise. He doubled down by using classical music instead of futuristic sound effects. This decision shocked viewers in 1968, but today it's considered revolutionary. Kubrick turned silence into the loudest statement in science fiction history. 8. The Stargate sequence was experimental art. The trippy Stargate light show wasn't created with computers. It was a mix of chemicals, light, and photography. Effects artist Douglas Trumbull built a machine called a slit scan that dragged lights past a moving camera to create infinite tunnels of color. It took hours to capture just a few seconds of footage. Kubrick kept pushing for more, demanding weeks of non-stop tests. The result was so mesmerizing that audiences in 1968 literally fainted in theaters, overwhelmed by the intensity. It was filmmaking at the edge of hallucination. 9. Stanley Kubrick feared aliens might steal his idea. Kubrick was obsessed with making aliens feel real, but he worried about one strange thing. What if NASA actually discovered life before the movie came out? He was so nervous about being outdated that he even talked with Carl Sagan, the famous astronomer, for advice. Sagan told him not to show aliens directly because anything specific would look silly in a few years. That's why we never see the extraterrestrials, only their mysterious tools, like the monolith. Kubrick turned fear into mystery, and it worked. 10. The zero-gravity pen was just tape. One of the most famous shots shows a pen floating weightlessly inside a spaceship. Instead of fancy effects, Kubrick simply glued the pen to a sheet of glass and slowly rotated it in front of the camera. The illusion was perfect, fooling everyone. What's even funnier is that NASA astronauts later said that was exactly how pens behaved in real spaceflight, floating, drifting, and spinning with no control. A cheap trick ended up being scientifically accurate. Sometimes, the simplest solution is the smartest one. 11. The moon's surface was shot in a sand pit. The eerie moon landing scene wasn't filmed on some distant location. It was shot in a massive indoor sand pit at a studio in England. Kubrick had truckloads of sand poured in, sculpted into craters, and carefully lit to look like real lunar soil. NASA even loaned him photographs from their missions to guide the design. The detail was so precise that conspiracy theorists later claimed the real Apollo landing was faked on Kubrick's set. Ironically, his obsession with realism became fuel for one of the biggest myths in history. 12. The spaceship models were huge. Unlike today's digital effects, Kubrick used giant physical models for his spacecraft. Some were over 50 feet long, covered in tiny hand-painted details that gave them texture and depth. These models were so convincing that film crews had to shoot them under extremely bright lights to mimic the sun in space. It took hours to film just a few seconds of smooth movement. Many of those original models are now museum treasures, considered priceless pieces of cinematic art. They weren't just props, they were sculptures of the future. 13. Kubrick wanted total control over sound. Kubrick was famously obsessive about sound design. He banned crew members from talking during playback, demanded absolute silence on set, and sometimes spent weeks just choosing the right piece of music. At first, he only used classical tracks as placeholders until a composer finished the score. But Kubrick liked the temporary music so much, Strauss, Ligeti, Khachaturian, that he dumped the composer's work entirely. That bold choice gave the movie its haunting identity. Classical music and outer space became forever linked after 2001. 14. The food was actually NASA-approved. Those strange little trays of colorful food the astronauts ate weren't random props. Kubrick contacted NASA to find out what real astronauts consumed in space. The studio recreated authentic space meals, freeze-dried powders, pastes, and cubes that were scientifically accurate. Actors hated the taste, but Kubrick insisted on realism down to the last crumb. This small detail made the film feel eerily authentic, almost like a documentary. Audiences believed every bite was real astronaut cuisine. 15. The bone to satellite. Cut changed cinema. One of the most famous edits in movie history happens when a bone tossed by an ape transforms into a spaceship. That single cut jumps millions of years in human evolution in just 1 second. Editors at the time had never seen anything like it. It was bold, radical, and poetic. The transition became one of the most studied shots in film schools worldwide. It showed that editing wasn't just technical, it could tell entire stories without words. Kubrick turned a simple cut into pure art. 16. The apes were actors in costumes. The opening Dawn of Man sequence looked so real that many viewers thought Kubrick had filmed actual apes. In truth, the performers were trained mimes wearing state-of-the-art suits and masks. The makeup team spent hours layering hair and prosthetics until every movement felt authentic. Kubrick even studied animal documentaries to direct the actors on how to move and fight. The realism was so convincing that the Academy thought the scenes used real animals. That's how flawless the illusion was. 17. HAL's voice wasn't the first choice. HAL 9000, the chilling computer, almost had a very different sound. Kubrick originally recorded the lines with actor Martin Balsam, whose voice was warm and fatherly, but Kubrick found it too friendly and not unsettling enough. Eventually, he chose Douglas Rain, a Canadian actor with a calm, emotionless delivery. That detached tone turned HAL into one of cinema's most terrifying villains. The wrong voice could have ruined the character, but Rain's icy performance made HAL unforgettable. 18. Kubrick deleted a lot of footage. When 2001 premiered, the original cut was over 160 minutes long. Kubrick personally trimmed nearly 20 minutes after the first screenings, cutting whole scenes of astronauts and extra dialogue. He felt the film worked better when audiences had to interpret the mystery themselves. The removed footage was thought lost forever, until 2010, when reels were discovered in a salt mine in Kansas. They remain locked in studio archives, adding to the film's mystique. Even unfinished, Kubrick's vision feels complete. 19. The movie broke projectionists' equipment cinemas in 1968 weren't ready for 2001's advanced visuals. The film's extra-wide 70mm format pushed projectors to their limit, causing overheating and frequent breakdowns. Projectionists had to invent new ways to handle the reels, often staying late just to fix jammed machines. Some theaters even installed custom equipment to handle Kubrick's masterpiece. The film didn't just challenge viewers, it challenged the very technology used to show it. 20. Critics hated it. At first. When 2001 was first released, critics called it boring, confusing, and pretentious. Many walked out of early screenings, unsure what they had just seen. But younger audiences embraced it, turning it into a cultural phenomenon. People lined up to watch it again and again, often while experimenting with LSD to enhance the psychedelic visuals. Slowly, the critics changed their tune. Today, it's considered one of the greatest films ever made. Kubrick didn't just make a movie, he created a generational experience. Bonus: Kubrick's secret about the monolith. The black monolith remains one of cinema's biggest mysteries. For years, fans speculated whether it was a symbol of God, aliens, or pure evolution. Kubrick never explained, saying the ambiguity was the point. He believed mystery was more powerful than answers. The monolith's design was originally a pyramid, but Kubrick changed it to a sleek rectangle for simplicity. That blank, silent shape became one of the most iconic images in film history. 2001: A Space Odyssey wasn't just a movie. It was a cinematic experiment that redefined science fiction. 2001 is still asking the same question: are we alone, or is something greater guiding us?